The throne room fell silent when Commander Marcus Cole refused to kneel. "You misunderstand, human," the elder princess hissed, her silver scales catching the crystalline light. "This is not a request." Marcus kept his eyes fixed on the space between the two sisters, Seraphis with her cold silver markings, and Valeth with her warmer gold. Both stood on the elevated platform where their mother's empty throne cast a long shadow. The Empress had been dead for 3 standard weeks, and the Kithran Empire was tearing itself apart. "I'm a military advisor," Marcus said flatly. "Not a political prop. You're the human who held the Vorn Line," Valeth spoke, her voice softer than her sister's but no less dangerous. "The one soldier our generals couldn't break, bribe, or predict. Every noble house knows your name. Which is exactly why having you at my side would legitimize my claim," Seraphis cut in, stepping forward. Her gown of woven starlight shifted like liquid mercury. "The people adore you. The military respects you. You're worth more than 10,000 soldiers." Marcus felt the familiar exhaustion settle into his bones. 18 years of war. 3 species. 2 near-extinction events. And now this, caught between alien royalty who saw him as a chess piece. "I've spent my career keeping humans out of other species' politics," he said. "I'm not about to start now." "Then why did you come?" Valeth asked, tilting her head. The gesture was oddly human. She'd spent time among his kind during the Vorn War. "Because Admiral Chen ordered me to. Because Earth needs Kithran fuel reserves. Because I'm tired and this was supposed to be a diplomatic babysitting job." "Courtesy," he said instead. Seraphis laughed, a cold, sharp sound. "Courtesy. The human who killed 3,000 Vorn in a single night speaks of courtesy. I also helped evacuate your civilian outpost on Kithar 7. Marcus replied evenly. But nobody seems to remember that part. Something flickered across Valeth's face. Recognition, perhaps. She'd been at that outpost. "We remember," she said quietly. The doors behind Marcus burst open. A Kithran guard stumbled in, golden blood streaming from a wound in his neck. "The merchant guilds, they've declared for neither princess. They're moving on the capital with mercenary forces." Seraphis cursed in her native tongue. Valeth's hand went to the ceremonial blade at her hip, a blade Marcus knew she actually knew how to use. "How many?" Marcus asked automatically. The guard looked at him, then at the princesses, uncertain who held authority now. "Answer him," both sisters said simultaneously. They glared at each other. 12,000, Commander. Maybe more. The palace garrison numbered 3,000. Marcus had reviewed those numbers this morning out of habit. "Defensive positions?" he asked. "The western approach is compromised. They knew our patrol schedules." "Inside job." "Of course." Marcus turned to face both princesses fully. "You want my help? Fine, I ought. But I don't work for thrones. I work for soldiers who deserve to survive the night." "And if we refuse your terms?" Seraphis asked. "Then I'll walk out those doors, commandeer a shuttle, and let you figure this out yourselves." Valeth moved down the steps toward him. Up close, he was smaller than he'd realized. The top of her head barely reached his shoulder. But her eyes held the same war weariness he saw in his own mirror. "My sister and I agree on very little," she said. "But we both know what happens if the merchant guilds take control. They'll sell our people to the highest bidder. They'll ally with the Vorn remnants," Seraphis added, descending as well. "Everything we fought for will burn." Marcus looked between them. 2 sisters who hated each other, both reaching for him like a lifeline. "Fine," he said. "But we do this my way. No politics until the shooting stops. And if either of you tries to use me against the other while we're under fire, I walk. Clear?" Seraphis's scales rippled with suppressed anger. But she nodded. Valeth simply said, "Clear." It wasn't trust. It wasn't even agreement. But for the moment, it was enough. Battle for the Western Gate lasted 9 hours. Marcus had fought in worse conditions. The Vorn Line had been a 3-week nightmare of attrition. But something about this fight sat wrong in his stomach. Kithrans fighting Kithrans. Mercenaries with no stake in the outcome except payment. And 2 princesses who kept watching him more than they watched the enemy. "Fall back to the secondary barricade," he shouted into the comm. Alpha Squad, cover the civilians evacuating through Sector 7. He'd taken command naturally, filling the vacuum left by the dead general whose body they'd found in his quarters that morning. Poisoned. The merchant guilds had been planning this for months. Human. Full. Seraphis appeared at his elbow, her ceremonial gown replaced by practical battle armor. She'd fought in the war too, Marcus remembered. Led a destroyer squadron against Vorn raiders. "The eastern flank is collapsing." "I know. I sent your sister to reinforce it." Seraphis's eyes narrowed. "You sent Valeth?" she volunteered. Said she knew the terrain from her time at Kithar 7. She knows nothing. She's a diplomat, not a warrior. Marcus checked his rifle's charge. She killed 4 mercenaries in the first hour. With that ceremonial blade. Seraphis went still. "She... What? Turns out your sister's been taking combat training since the war." Quietly. Marcus met her gaze. Seemed she didn't want anyone to know. Wonder why? The implication landed. Seraphis' scales flushed a darker shade. Embarrassment or anger, he couldn't tell. We should discuss later. Marcus was already moving. Right now I need you at the northern courtyard. The garrison commander there is about to make a stupid decision and you're the only one he'll listen to. I'm not accustomed to taking orders from a human? Marcus finished. I know. But your mother's dead, your empire's burning. And right now I'm the only one without a stake in who sits on that throne. So you can follow my lead for the next few hours, or you can explain to your ancestors why you let their legacy fall to accountants with armies. Seraphis stared at him for a long moment. Then, impossibly, she smiled. It transformed her face, made her look younger, almost vulnerable. You really don't care about power, do you? I've seen what power does to people. Marcus turned toward the eastern front. It's rarely an improvement. He left her standing there and didn't look back. He found Valeth in the wreckage of a collapsed colonnade, her armor dented and her blade dark with blood. Around her, 6 mercenary bodies lay cooling in the dust. You should have waited for backup, Marcus said. They were flanking the medical station. Valeth's voice was steady, but he noticed her hands trembling slightly. 200 wounded inside, mostly civilians. And if you died... She looked up at him. Her golden scales were dimmed with grime, and there was a cut above her left eye that hadn't been there that morning. Then my sister would have one less rival. She paused. Is that not what everyone expects me to calculate? Marcus crouched beside her. Up close he could see the exhaustion in her features, not just from the battle, but from something older. Deeper. I don't know you well enough to expect anything, he said. But I know soldiers. And what you just did wasn't political calculation. It was protective instinct. Valeth was silent for a moment. Then, on Kither 7, Bend. When you came for the civilians, I was assigned to negotiate with the Vorn. To buy time. I remember. The negotiations failed. They were never going to work, the Vorn had already decided. But I kept trying anyway. Kept believing I could find words that would change their minds. Her voice dropped. By the time I realized the truth, they'd already started killing people. And then I showed up with 3 dropships and very poor diplomatic skills. The ghost of a smile crossed her face. You threatened to detonate the station's reactor core if they didn't surrender. I was bluffing. I know, but they didn't. Valeth looked at the bodies around her. I spent years after that learning to fight. Because I never wanted to be helpless again. Never wanted to stand there with nothing but words while people died around me. Marcus understood that. More than he wanted to admit. Your sister doesn't know. My sister thinks I'm soft. Weak. A diplomat playing at royalty. Valeth stood wincing at some hidden injury. Perhaps it's better that way. Perhaps, Marcus agreed. But I've noticed something about people who hide their strength. Eventually, someone underestimates them at exactly the wrong moment. Valeth studied him. Is that a warning or advice? Depends on who's listening. A comm burst interrupted them. Alpha Squad reporting the western gate was secured. Marcus acknowledged, then turned back to find Valeth watching him with an expression he couldn't read. You treat us both the same, she said. My sister and me. No favoritism. No scheming. Should I be scheming, every other advisor in this palace would be. Human or Kitharan. She tilted her head. But you genuinely don't care who takes the throne, do you? I care about who lives through the night, Marcus said. Everything else is paperwork. Valeth laughed, a surprised, genuine sound that seemed to startle even her. You're a very strange human, Commander. I'd been told. They walked back to the palace together, neither quite willing to break the silence that had settled between them. But for the first time since Marcus had arrived on Cathera, the weight in his chest felt slightly lighter. The siege entered its 2nd week. The merchant guild forces had been pushed back from the capital, but they'd dug in outside the walls and cut supply lines. Inside the palace, tensions rose with each passing day. Seraphis and Valeth circled each other like predators sharing a kill, their truce holding only because Marcus stood in the middle. This cannot continue, Admiral Chen's holographic face flickered in Marcus's private quarters. Earth needs those fuel agreements, Commander. We cannot wait for their succession crisis to resolve naturally. Naturally means civil war, Marcus replied. Millions dead, the Empire fractured. That's their problem. Your mission was diplomatic observation, not king-making. Admiral, with respect, the respect you're paying me suggests you're about to do something I won't like. Chen's expression hardened. Choose carefully, Cole. Earth has invested too much in you to lose you to alien politics. The connection cut. Marcus sat in the darkness, feeling the familiar weight of impossible choices pressing down on him. A knock at his door. He checked the security feed. Seraphis, alone, her silver scales muted to near gray in the dim corridor lighting. Come in. She entered like she owned the room, which technically she did. The palace was still hers, at least until someone decided otherwise. You spoke with your superiors, she said. It wasn't a question. They want results. And what do they consider results? Fuel agreements. Stability. The appearance of an empire that won't collapse the moment we turn our backs. Marcus stood facing her. What are you actually here for? Seraphis' composure cracked. Just slightly. I need to know something. One question, answered honestly. Ask. If you had to choose between my sister and me. Well, not for politics, not for power, but simply as people. Which would you choose? Marcus had been asked variations of this question a dozen times over the past 2 weeks. By advisors, nobles, even servants hoping to position themselves for the coming power shift. But Seraphis asked it differently. There was something raw in her voice. Something that had nothing to do with thrones. Why does it matter? Because... She turned away, arms crossed. Because I spent my entire life preparing to rule. Every relationship has been a transaction. Every alliance, a calculation. Every person who claims to care about me wants something. Except you. I want your empire's fuel. You want your people's fuel. That's not the same. Seraphis turned back, her eyes bright with something he couldn't name. My sister saved civilians because she genuinely cares about them. I know that. I've always known it. She would make a compassionate ruler. But compassion alone doesn't protect an empire. The merchant guilds understand force. The Vorn understand force. Compassion without strength is just vulnerability. Your sister killed 6 mercenaries in hand-to-hand combat. Seraphis' surprise was genuine. She told you about that? I was there. Silence stretched between them. Then Seraphis laughed, bitter and tired. Of course you were. You're always there, aren't you? Right in the middle of everything, seeing parts of us we try to hide. I'm a soldier. Observation keeps people alive. Is that all you are? He stepped closer. Just a soldier? Marcus didn't step back. It's all I let myself be. Why? Because caring gets people killed. Because every person I've loved has ended up in a memorial database somewhere. Because if I let myself feel anything for either of you, I'll make mistakes. Because it's simpler, he said instead. Seraphis reached out, her scaled fingers brushing his arm. The touch was cool, alien, and somehow intimate. Nothing about this is simple, Commander. Nothing about us. The door opened. Valeth stood in the entrance, her expression unreadable. The scouts have returned, she said flatly. The merchant guilds are receiving Vorn reinforcements. 2 warships, inbound. Seraphis pulled back from Marcus as if burned. How long? 12 hours. Marcus was already moving, his mind shifting to tactical mode. We need to evacuate non-combatants. Prepare defensive positions for orbital bombardment. Contact any allies who might. There's another option. Valeth's voice stopped him cold. The merchant guilds sent terms. What terms? Valeth's eyes met his. They'll withdraw if one of us abdicates, permanently. Meaning? Exile, or death. He paused. And they want you to choose which sister survives. The throne room felt different in the pale light of pre-dawn. Empty of courtiers and advisors, it was just a room. Stone and crystal, and the weight of centuries pressing down on everyone who entered. Marcus stood before the empty throne, flanked by both princesses. The merchant guild's representative, a sleek Kitharin with no house markings and eyes like polished obsidian, waited at the room's entrance with a squad of armed guards. The terms are simple, he said. One sister takes the throne. The other is removed. Permanently. The Vorn warships withdraw, and the siege ends. The human commander ensures the transition is orderly. And if I refuse? Marcus asked. Then we let the Vorn bombard this palace from orbit. Everyone dies. Including your precious Earth representatives hiding in the embassy district. The representative smiled. Surely one life is worth thousands? Marcus felt both sisters watching him. Waiting. Can I speak with them alone? You have 10 minutes. The representative withdrew, and the doors sealed behind him. Silence. You can't choose, Seraphis said finally. Either way, they'll use you as a puppet. Make you complicit. I know. So refuse. Valeth's voice was calm. Let them bomb the palace. We'll evacuate who we can, through the underground passages. The passages are compromised, Marcus said. Guild agents have been inside the city for weeks. They'll have every exit covered. Then we fight. Seraphis's scales rippled with determination. To the last soldier, if necessary. Your people will die. My people have always been willing to die for the Empire. Marcus turned to face them both. In 2 weeks of conflict, he'd watched these sisters. Enemies by circumstance, rivals by birth. Each revealed depths neither knew the other possessed. Seraphis with her fierce protectiveness hidden beneath cold calculation. Valeth with her warrior's heart masked by diplomatic composure. And both, in their own ways, had reached for him. Not for his tactical value. Not for his name. For something else entirely. There's another option, he said quietly. Both sisters stiffened. The merchant guilds want a transition that looks legitimate. They want someone to endorse the new order. Someone the people in military trust. You, Valeth said. Me. Marcus nodded. What if I gave them what they wanted, but not the way they expected? Seraphus's eyes narrowed. Explain. The guild's entire plan depends on division. 2 sisters fighting. 1 winner. 1 loser. The empire torn apart and rebuilt under their control. Marcus moved to stand between them. What if there was no division? What if the sisters chose each other? Joint rule is impossible, Seraphus said. Our laws don't allow. Your laws are written by people. People can change them. Marcus looked at Valeth. You said your mother kept the merchant guilds in check through political maneuvering. What if that's still possible? Valeth was silent for a moment. Then, slowly. The noble houses haven't declared for the guilds. They're waiting. Watching. Because they don't trust either sister alone, Seraphus finished, understanding dawning. But together, you represent both strength and compassion. Military capability and diplomatic wisdom. Everything your mother was. Marcus felt something loosen in his chest, a tension he hadn't known he was carrying. You stop being rivals and start being partners. And you? Seraphus asked. What role do you play in this arrangement? I hold the line until the noble houses arrive. 12 hours is enough time to send coded messages, call in favors. The guilds think they've won. They'll be overconfident. You'd be in the throne room when the Vorn ships arrive, Valeth said softly. Ground zero for any bombardment. I know. Marcus. It was the first time either of them had used his first name. Valeth's voice cracked slightly. You don't have to. Yes, I do. He turned to face them fully. I told you I don't care about thrones. That's true. But I care about what they represent. Stability. Protection for people who can't protect themselves. A future that isn't just endless war. And us? Seraphus asked. Do you care about us? Marcus had spent 18 years keeping people at arm's length. Building walls. Convincing himself that isolation was strength. But standing here in the shadow of an alien throne, facing 2 sisters who'd each asked him to choose, he understood something he'd been avoiding for a long time. Yes, he said quietly. I care about you. Both of you. Valeth's breath caught. Seraphus's silver scales flushed with color. Then don't do this alone, Valeth said. Whatever happens next, we face it together. As what? Marcus asked. Seraphus and Valeth looked at each other. Something passed between them. Years of rivalry, resentment, and beneath it all, the bond of shared blood and shared loss. Seraphus extended her hand toward her sister. After a moment, Valeth took it. As partners, Seraphus said. All 3 of us. The Merchant Guild representative returned exactly 10 minutes later, confident and predatory. Your decision, Commander. Marcus smiled. I've chosen both. The next 12 hours would later be called the Succession Gambit in official histories. The Merchant Guild forces, unprepared for a united front, found themselves outmaneuvered politically and militarily. The noble houses, sensing which way the wind was blowing, declared for the dual monarchy. Vorn warships, their allies suddenly isolated, withdrew rather than face a unified Kithaeron defense. Marcus Cole stood on the palace balcony as dawn broke properly, watching the siege lines dissolve. Beside him, Seraphus and Valeth stood together, not as rivals, but as co-rulers of an empire that had nearly burned. You could have walked away, Valeth said softly. At any point, let us destroy ourselves. Probably should have, Marcus admitted. It's what I was trained to do. Observe. Don't interfere. But? Seraphus prompted. Marcus thought about 18 years of war. 3 species. 2 near-extinction events. And somewhere along the way forgetting what he was fighting for. But somewhere between the siege and the throne room, I remembered that humans don't just survive, he said. We connect. We protect. We choose. Valeth's hand found his left. Seraphus's hand found his right. And you chose us, Seraphus said. I chose what you could become together, what we could all become together. Marcus looked out at the recovering city. The war's over. For now. But there's going to be rebuilding, negotiations, probably 3 more crises by next month. Are you staying? Valeth asked. Marcus thought about Admiral Chen's orders. About Earth's fuel requirements. About all the reasons he should extract himself from alien politics and return to comfortable neutrality. Then he thought about 2 sisters who'd learned to reach for each other instead of for power. About an empire that might actually heal instead of shatter. About the way both of their hands felt in his, cool and alien, and somehow exactly right. Yeah, he said. I'm staying. The throne room politics would be complicated. The official title they'd give him would probably be ridiculous. And Earth's diplomatic corps was going to have a collective aneurysm when they found out. But standing between 2 former rivals who'd chosen partnership over power, who'd chosen him not as a prize but as a partner, Marcus Cole felt something he hadn't felt in 18 years. Hope. And that in the end, was worth more than any throne.